Hello, grade 7s, and welcome to the Taiwan History Podcast. The following information has been collected from two sources: The Lonely Planet History of Taiwan and Wikipedia. Sources can be found at the end of your document. Thank you and enjoy. Part 1. Taiwan under Jiang. 21. Though adept at slaughtering civilians, Jiang's KMT proved less so at fighting soldiers, and before long Mao's communist forces had driven the KMT from the mainland. Fully defeated, Chiang Kai-shek fled to Taiwan, followed by a steady stream of soldiers, monks, artists, peasants, and intellectuals. One of the first things Jiang did when he arrived in Taiwan was to send Chen Yi back to the mainland. He was later executed. By 1949, the ROC consisted of Taiwan, Penghu, and a number of islands off the Chinese coast, including Matsu and Jinmen. These Straits Islands were quickly set up as military zones, both to rebuff any mainland attack and to set up a base of operations from which Jiang vowed he would use to retake the Chinese mainland. 22. On Taiwan, Jiang proved the able state governor that he had never been in China, instituting a series of land reform policies that successfully laid the foundation for Taiwan's future economic success. While advertising his government in exile as Free China, based on the democratic ideals of Sun Yat-sen, Jiang's Taiwan was anything but free. The February 28 incident on the February 28th massacre, or the February 28 massacre, also known as the 228 incident, Ba Shijian, was an anti-government uprising in Taiwan that was violently suppressed by the government, which killed thousands of civilians beginning on February 28, 1947. The number of Taiwanese deaths from the incident and massacre was estimated to be between 5,000 and 28,000. The massacre marked the beginning of the White Terror, in which tens of thousands of other Taiwanese went missing, died, or were imprisoned. The incident is one of the most important events in Taiwan's modern history and was a critical impetus for the Taiwan independence movement. 23. During the Korean War, the Americans were protective of Taiwan, assuring the Taiwanese that they would repel any communist attacks. Military outbreaks between China and Taiwan were common in the 1950s and 1960s, with Jinmen subjected to regular shelling, that means bombs. Events such as the August 23rd Artillery War kept Jiang's Free China firmly entrenched in the hearts and minds of anti-communist America. At the time of the KMT arrival, the Taiwanese had been heavily indoctrinated by the Japanese and spoke little Mandarin. They were also accustomed to a higher standard of living than the mainland Chinese and felt an ingrained superiority towards the poor and less well-educated immigrants, especially soldiers who often came from humble backgrounds. The KMT issued laws requiring all Taiwanese to speak Mandarin in an attempt to re-Sinicize the population. The Taiwanese resented the heavy-handedness of the KMT, and there were various outbreaks of rebellion and clashes with military police. 24. Though Taiwan prospered during the 1950s and 1960s, her economy becoming one of the richest in Asia and her population growing to 16 million, big changes were on the horizon as the 1970s began. In 1971, Chiang Kai-shek withdrew the ROC from the UN Security Council after the Council's admission of the People's Republic of China, PRC, mainland China. In 1979, America, the ROC's staunchest international ally, switched official recognition from the ROC to the PRC. US policy towards Taiwan would now be dictated by the Taiwan's Relations Act, which, while promising to protect Taiwan militarily in any case of attack by mainland China, recognized Beijing as the sole capital of a China which included Taiwan. 25. Chiang Kai-shek died in 1975, his presidential duties taken over by his son, Jiang Jing-guo. The younger Jiang's rule over Taiwan was softer than that of his father. In an effort to improve relations with native Taiwanese, Jiang allowed more Taiwanese to take up political positions. The late 1970s saw increasing political dissent in Taiwan. One of the most noteworthy uprisings of the late martial law period occurred in December 1979. 26. Considered a turning point in Taiwan's shift from authoritarian rule to democracy, the Kaohsiung incident occurred when editors of Mei Li Dao, a publication often critical of the government, organized a rally to celebrate International Human Rights Day. The day before the rally, two organizers were arrested and beaten by police when they were caught handing out promotional flyers. On the day of the rally, scuffles broke out between police and protesters, and the situation turned violent, changing from a peaceful event into a full-scale riot. 8 of the organizers were arrested, including Taiwan's current vice president, Annette Lu. Among the lawyers who represented the organizers was future Taiwanese President Chen Shui-bian. Though it was a short-term defeat for the democracy advocates, the violence brought increasing support for democratic reforms. Public sentiment eventually forced the KMT to make political concessions. In 1986, with martial law still in effect, Taiwan's first opposition party, the Democratic Progressive Party, DPP, or the Green Party, was formed. Jiang Jing-guo, surprisingly, did not shut the party down, resulting in a large number of DPP candidates being elected to office, and culminating in the official formation of Taiwan's first opposition party. 27. In 1987, Jiang Jing-guo announced the end of martial law. The following year, Jiang passed away, and his vice president, Li Teng-hui, became the first Taiwanese-born ROC president. For Taiwan, a new era had begun. Post-martial law until now. 28. With Taiwan all but excluded from the international community and China growing economically and militarily, Li Teng-hui had his work cut out for him. Early in his presidency, Li paid lip service to the One China policy, but as the years progressed, he developed a more pro-independent stance. Mistrustful of Li, China launched a series of missiles only 25 kilometers away from the Taiwanese coast in 1995. But the scare tactics backfired, and Taiwan re-elected Li Teng-hui in open elections the following year. 29. Sensing that the stick approach had failed, China switched to carrots, and in 1998 offered to lift the ban on shipping and direct flights. The offer was rebuffed by Li, who incensed China even further the next year by declaring openly his belief that China and Taiwan, as two separate countries, should enjoy state-to-state relations. 30. In 2000, with Taiwan's presidential elections looming on the horizon, there was much cross-strait saber-rattling. Despite this, DPP candidate Chen Shui-bian won in a 3-party race, ending 54 years of KMT rule in Taiwan. Though the election signaled pro-independence, Chen was widely seen as a disaster by Beijing. The newly elected Chen soon softened his stance somewhat, declaring in his inauguration speech that the status quo would be maintained as long as China did not attempt to take Taiwan by force. But Beijing was hardly won over by Chen's words, demanding a firm One China principle. 31. Chen found himself between a rock and a hard place, unable to please either his supporters or his detractors. As a result, cross-strait relations stalled during Chen's first term, with the only glimmer of improvement being the opening of a limited trade and travel between China and Taiwan's offshore islands. Though often overshadowed by the more high-profile presidential election, Taiwan's legislative election of 2001 was equally revolutionary, reducing the KMT, albeit temporarily, to minority party status in a legislature they had once controlled with an iron grip. 32. Chen's re-election in 2004, by the slimmest of margins, was surrounded by strange circumstances, to say the least. An assassination attempt on the day before the election resulted in both president and vice president being mildly wounded, both by the same bullet. Needless to say, some felt the event was staged for sympathy. China, fearing that Chen's re-election would embolden pro-independence factions, caused cross-strait tensions to be ratcheted to their highest level in years with the issuing an anti-succession law. The law, in brief, codified China's long-standing threat to attack Taiwan should the island's leader declare independence. Though Beijing's move was protested by massive rallies throughout Taiwan, cross-strait tensions seem to have abated somewhat since, and there's been little outside of the usual saber-rattling for the past 2 years. 33. Recent major political stories have been the changing of the names of various state-run departments and buildings to incorporate the word Taiwan instead of China, and the large-scale removal of thousands of statues of former dictator Chiang Kai-shek from many public spaces in Taiwan. There's even talk of removing Chiang's statue from one of Taipei's most famous landmarks, Chiang Kai-shek Memorial Hall, Zhongjianjinyangtang. The hall's name itself might have been changed to the National Taiwan Democracy Memorial Hall. This concludes Part 3 of the Taiwan History Podcast.